Welcome to the Man Cave Podcast with Dan Casper.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to this episode of the Man Cave Podcast, brought to you by Hy-Vee and Toys and Four. Dan here. Brandon is also with me. How you doing, man?
Hi.
Going to actually do a top 5 plus on this episode.
A little bit.
It's been a hot minute.
We've been busy.
We have. Things kind of... So, and I'll be honest, it's been a little bit since we put up a Man Cave Podcast episode. Put up some other segments, but I don't know. It's kind of a... I don't want to say a down year right now, but I feel like... Or down months.
Down time.
Time, yeah. But I feel like it's just a lot of the same stuff is kind of going on. Does that make sense?
Yes. So are you saying that in our top 5 today that May, it's not going to be May?
It's not going to be May in my top 5 plus, because we are doing the top 5 sports months in our opinion.
In our opinion.
So
as fans.
Like,
I am not taking into account, like, my job.
Right.
Like, my favorite months of the year to work. Like, this is just, like, as a sports fan, like, what months do I get the most excited for based on what's out there?
Exactly. So everybody's got their own. And after listening to this, if you disagree, agree, or think we got the orders wrong, let us know. All right? Hit us up. Just be nice about it, because Brandon cries when you guys send him hurtful messages on social media and that. So, also later on in the podcast, Brandon and I are going to talk a little Brewers. We got that up, and then I'm going to throw a little Packers chat in at the end. But let's get it going here. Top 5 plus the best sports months of the year, and we don't have any honorable mentions.
There is no plus this time because there's only 12 months. Like,
because if you did one honorable mention, it's already half of the year. So it's
sports. Yeah, so I would just. This is when we decide to take a stand.
I feel like you and I are probably going to have the same top 2, maybe a different order, or I don't know. But I think I'm more interested in 3 through 5 on how this is going to play out.
Yeah.
So start off with number 5. I'll let you go first.
Well, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
My number 5 is December.
Okay.
You got a lot going on. College football conference championship games into bowl season. As you know, I'm a big fan of bowl season.
Yep.
NFL is that final, that final full month. You're really starting to get the playoff races there.
Yep.
And NBA and NHL are really getting underway.
It's the Christmas day for NBA,
you get Christmas,
right?
There's just December. It's just solid. I think for me, college. Football is really anchoring that month for me between college and pro.
And you got, if you wanted to add more, college basketball kind of kicks into conference games.
You get some conference games going.
Mm-hmm. Wisconsin's got the Marquette game to begin the month usually there too. So
those are some other good ones too. But that December for me, number 5.
All right, my number 5 is February. You got the Super Bowl that month in February. You got. Obviously college basketball's kind of really starting to ramp up, or even kind of getting closer to March and conference tournaments. Like, those are conference games in February when you kind of get to it for basketball, and I think that's where it really kind of hypes up a little bit. NBA is going on. The NHL is going on. So for me, February, the big thing there is the Super Bowl. That's kind of the highlight there too. And then you're kind of getting into Combine and starting to lead up to the draft process, which is one of my favorite sports events of the year. So that kind of, end of February, you really get into draft season at that point. So I got February as my 5th one on there. Number 4.
Number 4 for me, March.
Ooh, okay.
So obviously March Madness.
Yep.
College basketball is big. You got Major League Baseball season starting at the end, but you're getting fully into spring training there. Mm-hmm. You mentioned kind of some of the draft subterfuge stuff going on. You've got
pro days and that.
You got all that stuff. You've got NBA and NHL kind of really starting to kind of hit the stretch of the season. Mm-hmm. You kind of see who's who.
It's the final full month.
Yep. Really. You've got NASCAR kind of getting into full gear. You mentioned February, obviously Daytona's done.
That's true.
You've got pretty much every week for races in March there, and so Just a lot of things I like.
Yeah. Number 4 for me is August. I went with August for number 1, preseason football, baby.
You are more of a preseason football guy than I am. So.
I love me some preseason football. I know training camp opens at the end of July, but games really, and if you do it from a Packers sense, family night's the beginning of August. It's always the first Friday or Saturday. Then you got the preseason games after that. Love me some preseason football. August, you're getting into the second to last full month of baseball, really, too. maybe some playoff pushes going on over there. So, I mean, those are pretty much the main highlights because basketball is not really going on or hockey or anything like that. But when August rolls around, to me, that's when I transition into football, really, and that's where it just really gets me going. Plus, Casper Classic.
I was just going to say that.
Oh, okay.
Now that is established in that month.
Yep. So that's number 4 for me. Number 3.
Number 3 for me is September.
Ooh, okay.
September, obviously NFL season starting. Major League Baseball is in its final month.
Mm-hmm.
College football is really getting underway. I mean, those are kind of the 3 heavy hitters for me there.
Mm-hmm. My number 3 is March for a lot of the same reasons you had for March. I mean, when you have March Madness, attached to it, obviously it's highlighted with a lot of college basketball, men's and women's now. I mean, it's been really fun to get into women's basketball the last couple of years too. Hopefully that continues. I know Caitlin Clark was the big pushing one there too. But, yeah, basketball, you mentioned baseball, opening day. At the end of the month over there, NBA, it's the last full month. Hockey, last full month of that season too. So a lot of the same references you had for March. That's why it's number 3 for me, which my prediction of us having the same top 2, I don't know if it'll be in the same order, but it's looking better right now.
I think it will.
Okay.
I think it will.
Your number 2.
October.
Yes, that's what mine is. So we might as well
let's
piggyback
let's talk about why do we love October. NFL season. For me, NFL season's really underway.
Yep.
College football, you're really into conference schedules. Like that's big. You've got Major League Baseball postseason.
Yep.
NBA and NHL are just starting up.
Yep, exactly. I mean, baseball season, it's October. I mean, that's, the postseason. You talk about that. You mentioned the NFL. You kind of get that first month of September in because you hear a lot of people, that's the first quarter of the season in, and then the second quarter, because was it Belichick where a lot of people say after the first 4 games you start to know maybe what teams are like, and that's kind of in October over there too, and that's really when it starts to hit fall, in my opinion. So October, yeah, the football season there. You mentioned baseball postseason is one of the best times of the year, World Series and all that. So yeah, you got like everything going on, right?
Yeah, you've got the NBA and NHL just getting started too.
Mm-hmm. Yep, yeah, at the end of the month, and you're kind of getting close to some college hoops, not too much, but they're kind of
there's some rumble. You start to get the rumblings.
They're getting ready for those tournaments the next month in November. You pretty much have the main sports going on at the same time in October. So, number 1, April.
Number 1's April.
Yep, same here. Draft, the Masters,
first month of baseball,
the national championship in basketball,
the start of the NBA and NHL postseasons.
Yep, I mean it's all across the board. I love it. There is no shortage of stuff to watch, pay attention to, talk about. When you think about it too, I think when you maybe kind of talk to maybe a general sports fan, you say April's year, it kind of pauses them for a second because your go-to, I think, for a lot of people is like, well, there's no football games being played. I think that's the general consensus because football is the most popular sport out there. But when you look at the grand scheme of things, you got the NFL draft, which is, in my opinion, the biggest sports event that doesn't involve a game being played.
Right. Its name's being read.
Right.
And it draws a gigantic crowd.
Yep. And I don't know if you have the same reason for this, but like Hudson asked me, like, why is the draft one of your favorite sports events? And my answer is I like to try to figure out what teams' plans are doing or it's a prediction thing. I like to figure out what they're doing, what their vision is, and try to, because I don't know if it goes back to when we were kids and playing Madden and doing the GM role sort of thing, and that's what we try to. That's our grown-up version of that. But that's where I just like the intrigue and, like, trying to figure out what the direction they're going is and just seeing, like, if your thoughts match up to those teams, too.
To me, the NFL draft is always about hope.
Yes.
You can be the worst team there is, and unless you traded your first overall pick, that's what it ended up being to somebody else, like, you have a shot. Like, if you're the Chicago Bears, and they've been in a good direction, but, like, you come out of that draft with legitimate hope. As a Vikings fan, you came out of the draft with your quarterback. Now, you and I have been following the draft long enough to know, like, absolutely nothing's guaranteed. Like,
right.
You can feel the best you've ever felt coming out of a draft saying, oh, my team crushed it, they did this and that. But like, okay, well, now we actually see if it matters.
Right.
Like, we see if because we've been right on things, we've been wrong on a lot of things. Like, but the NFL draft doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you're the Chiefs and you just won the Super Bowl, or if you're Washington and you had the second overall pick and the second worst record in the league.
Yep.
You come out of that draft with hope.
And on top of that, too, by default, you got better. Like,
yeah, because you really couldn't get worse because you're usually not subtracting from your roster.
And I don't think a team has gone into a draft where they've had no picks. Right.
Right. No.
So you're adding players, which by default you're getting better.
Right.
How much better? That's why they play the games. We don't know. But yeah, you're right. I love the hope part on there too. It's just that excitement, kind of, and that to me is what really kind of kicks off the NFL season. One thing I forgot to mention in March though, just to go back to it, NFL free agency.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
I forgot to put that one in there.
It's always fun when you get to that 3:00 and you just suddenly get the
legal tampering day.
Legal tampering is underway. 2 seconds later, someone has agreed to a 4-year contract. It's like, whoa, they work fast.
Masters is my favorite golf tournament. I think it's your favorite golf tournament. I mean, it's the one the majority of people, even if you're just a casual fan or not even a fan, you're paying attention to, or Augusta National. Brackets. With basketball, April's got everything.
Masters also has the putting challenge.
The putting challenge over there, too. So, yeah, April has a little bit of everything. You got postseason play for, college basketball and then, NBA and Stanley Cup. The beginning of, as you say, hope for championships for football. And even the Masters, too, is kind of the beginning of the golf season, really.
Really,
it's like Daytona 500 a little bit.
Yeah, you have.
I know they got tournaments and that, but
like that's the first one everyone looks at.
Yep. So we got 3. We both had April. We both had October. We both had March. March was in a different spot for the both of us, but yeah, I'll be honest though. Years ago, I would have said October was my favorite. I don't know why. Really, why I think I had the mindset of baseball playoffs, football season's going on, college football, all that, but I love the NFL draft too much. And it's just spring.
Yep. Spring is always, hope springs eternal.
Yep, exactly. So, all right, that's our top 5 plus. There we go. We're going to take a quick break, but Brandon and I will be back, and we're going to talk a little Brewers coming up after these quick words. Perks. I love Perks. You love Perks. We all love Perks. And one of the best perks you can find in the Chippewa Valley is Hy-Vee Perks. Hy-Vee Perks is a free and easy program for Hy-Vee shoppers. Access exclusive Perks prices, earn discounts on gas when you purchase designated products at Hy-Vee, and save more with exclusive deals, offers, and rewards. The best part, it's free to join. Not a part of Hy-Vee Perks yet? No worries. Just stop by Hy-Vee in Eau Claire to sign up. Start taking advantage of the best shopping deals in the Chippewa Valley right now with Hy-Vee and Hy-Vee Perks. Tonight, well, first of all, recap last night's game. We did that, we did a little bit earlier, but to recap last night's game, we saw the Brewers offense, 7 runs scored. What are you doing?
What?
I'm glad the video's watching right now so people can see what you're doing right now.
I am doing nothing, sir.
Yeah, okay. So, you're in a mood today. How about that? Jeez, you're in a good mood. But the Brewers picking up a 7-1 victory last night. Bryce Terang and William Contreras at the top. I heard Rock a little bit last night because I just tuned in on the TV really quick just to catch a little bit. And he's like, this 1-2 is reminding me of Paul Muller and Robin Yount. And I'm like, I love it. It's just a couple games, though. But I get what he's saying. Terang gets on, steals, Contreras, the way he hits. It's a 1-0 Brewers lead right away. So, high praise. But ideally, that's why you'd have that 1-2 punch to work out that way, right? Terang gets on, he steals, Contreras, the way he hits all across the field, you get him across, right?
Yeah, I think that whoever is going to be that leadoff hitter is really important, given that they're hitting directly in front of William Contreras and Christian Yelich. Mm-hmm. And there's a couple different people they've kind of tried at different spots. Obviously, Sal Frelick got a decent line share of that up there, and he's someone that he takes his walks, but the hitting just hasn't quite been there yet for him. So they tried someone else, and obviously Bryce Terang has been one of the best hitters the Brewers have had to start the year. And then you factor in the base running, especially the ability to steal bases at the top of the order. I mean, that's just kind of a natural fit.
Yeah.
When you can have someone with that speed in front of Contreras and now with Yelich back, I mean, they're going to love it because they got a guy that they know if they hit one in the gap, he's probably scoring from first base.
Right.
I mean, that's going to help. That's going to help them drive in runs. It's going to probably give them some better pitches to hit because opposing pitchers are going to be worried about Terang stealing bases, so they're going to want to throw more
right.
pitches that you can throw on if you're the catcher. So it's just when it's all clicking, that's kind of I think the ideal scenario. And at this point, I think Bryce Terang has earned that opportunity to hit at the top of the lineup.
Right. Yeah. And then if Yelich kind of picks up where he left off, and last night he looked like it with even legging out a triple over there. I mean, I know it's still kind of early in that, but that's a pretty formidable 1-2-3 at the top, right?
Yeah, I think Pat Murphy said it, but I think it's really true that kind of the Christian Yelich return I think it kind of puts everyone in their best spot because everyone you looked at kind of the lineups when he was out, and they had moments where they hit, but you could tell they missed him. I mean, he's a top 2 offensive player they have. Like you're going to miss that when someone's gone for a month,
right.
But slotting him in the 3 spot it kind of makes everybody better because then everyone behind you kind of moves a spot down. Adames moves a spot down. Rhys Hoskins moves a spot down. Whoever else. William Contreras has somebody that's directly behind him that he knows if teams can't just fully pitch around him because he's got someone behind him that can make him pay. It's just when you have someone of that caliber, especially with the way he's played so far this year, like it just makes everybody better because everybody kind of takes a little bit of the pressure off themselves because they know there's another highly productive person in there with them.
That cleanup spot, Adames, 7 home runs this year. Hoskins has 8 right now. You look at maybe some of the averages, about 250 for Adames and Hoskins a little bit lower than that. But I mean, at that spot, the 4-5 hitters, are they doing exactly, in your opinion, what a 4-5 hitter should be doing with that power and maybe not having the best or a high average like a Terang or a Contreras or a Yelich, but they're providing that power in that lineup? I
think that's what you want because ideally you want someone that can come up there and drive in a few runs. And certainly between those top 3, assuming going forward it's still Terang, Contreras, and Yelich, those are not only 3 guys that are hitting well, but they're 3 high on base guys. They're guys that'll take their walks. They're guys that are patient. So in theory, there should be runners on base often for the middle of the order. And then, you just want them to, I mean, that's kind of what Rhys Hoskins did last night. 3-run home run.
Right.
A few days ago, Willie Adames had one in the win over Kansas City late where you want people in that spot that can, put up a crooked number.
Right. Do you think Sanchez should get more opportunities in the lineup? I mean, he kind of has been lately.
He kind of has.
But he's up to 5 home runs already.
Yeah, I think with Gary Sanchez, what you're going to get is you're going to get a guy that hits for some power. The average isn't really going to be there, and the on base really isn't going to be there, but the OPS is. Like he makes when he does hit it, he makes the most of it. So I think at this point right now, I remember going back a little ways. I think maybe it was after the home run he hit against the Pirates against Earl Stratton. He mentioned he wanted to get some more opportunities. It really seems like he's kind of done that since then. And if he can play a passable first base, that'll help his case as well. I think he's earned getting some more opportunities, and I think he's started to get it.
It's a good problem to have though too, right? I mean, you got Contreras playing at the level he has, so you don't really want to sit him or take him out of the lineup. You got Hoskins, who's displaying some power. Obviously, Sanchez in his limited time has displayed that too. I mean, it's a good problem to have when you have that many different options.
Right. When you're the manager and you go in every day, or you're putting out your lineups, what you think you're going to have for the next few days, and you think, man, we just got a lot of guys that are hitting. I mean, I know some people have kind of been hoping Joey Ortiz would play a little bit more. With Oliver Dunn still getting a decent amount of starts against right-handed pitching, but. Joey Ortiz is doing exactly what he needs to do to make that case. When he's out there, he's hitting.
Right.
And he's playing good defense. So
he's growing a nice stash, too.
He's giving
that thing? Yeah. A little Tom Selleck action
there
right
we
there.
go.
I like it.
So. I think that's just kind of when people are hitting, it's pretty easy to make that lineup. When they're not, pretty much no lineup you put out there is going to suddenly unlock 7 runs a game. So
right. So tonight we get to see Robert Gasser, right? Getting his major league debut. He was a part of the trade that sent Josh Hader to the Padres. Came back number 5 prospect in the Brewers system, left-handed pitcher. I think they've got, they envision big plans for him, right? As part of that next group of young guys in that rotation. What kind of pitcher is he? What should we maybe, I don't want you to say, well, this is what you're going to see tonight, because we don't know how it's, but what does he do well, or what is he really kind of, I guess, known for, or what's his best, what's he best at?
Well, left-handed pitcher, someone that pitched at AAA all last year, I believe, for the Brewers, and had a pretty good year. A little bit, banged up to start this year, so I think that's probably why he wasn't with the team already. Mm-hmm. But a guy that'll throw a bunch of different pitches. I mean, nothing, velocity is not going to wow you. It's lower to mid-90s, but, fastball, cutter, curveball, changeup, slider. He'll kind of throw a little bit of a lot of different things, and he's a guy that tends to be around the zone. He's not walking too many guys. I mean, in this day and age, when you're throwing lower to mid 90s, that's kind of on the lower end of velocity, seemingly. But still, I mean, he gets outs. He's got pitchability, so he knows how to pitch. I mean, he's not just going out there trying to blow smoke by people. So he's someone that's made a few starts, and this is, I think, kind of was the plan, and he's going to get that opportunity, especially with some of the injuries that there's been and stuff. There's an opportunity there, and it's going to be his time to see what he can do.
Mm-hmm. Would you put him because I was trying to look at the next few years, projecting the next few years. Freddie might be the veteran of that group. Would you say Aaron Ashby, Robert Gasser, DL Hall, and maybe Mizorowski?
Yeah.
Would that be the 5?
Those are some. I think there's another guy, Carlos Rodriguez, who's in the minors right now. He's someone that you could see at some point, maybe later this year, because he's still a little bit younger than some of those other guys. But I think those are some of the ones you look for. Tobias Myers is getting an opportunity. The big thing for him, I think, anyone that's watched him so far can see is you just got to keep the ball in the ballpark.
Right.
He throws strikes outside of the start of that Cubs game, but he's just. You got to, there's a difference between, control and command.
Right.
You got to be able to not only throw strikes, but throw good strikes. The Myers, you can get away with just, pounding the strike zone, but you kind of have a little bit more nuance to it in the majors. Otherwise, teams will take you deep.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think I saw online the other day, there seems to be, and you've mentioned it before many times, but a little bit more attention on what Mizorowski's doing right now. I mean, there's some highlight clips out there too. I mean, he is the number 2 rated prospect in the Brewers farm system. Still Jackson, I mean, at some point
there's a certain amount.
Change,
once you get a certain amount of plate appearances or whatever, that kind of you lose your status as being counted on as a prospect, even though you're still a rookie.
Right, and he's in Double-A right now, I believe.
Yes, he's with Biloxi.
So he wouldn't make an appearance this year. I
doubt it. I think he's probably more of a 2025 guy, just because he's a little bit younger still too, and. With him, with Mizorowski, it's all about a lot. He throws hard. Last year when he pitched in the Futures game, he really impressed because, he was just going up there. He threw an inning. He was just pumping in, 98, 99 mile-an-hour fastballs.
Man.
And for him, they just want to keep giving him innings because, he's still wild.
Yep.
So you want to try to smooth that out a little bit. So he's one of those guys that, if he's not a starter, they think he can be a super high end, end of the back of the rotation reliever. But you want to give him a chance to be a starter because obviously that's that's the more ideal outcome.
Mm-hmm. 2 guys I want to get your thoughts on. Are they 2 of maybe the more pleasantly surprising players so far for the Brewers this year? I'm talking about Bryce Wilson and Brian Hudson. With what Wilson being stretched out now as kind of a starter, right? With all the injuries there. And then now Hudson's favorite player, Hudson, because he saw the game last night. Somebody was wearing a Hudson jersey, but it was 00s. And he's like, well, who's that number? Is that, his number? But, he's 2-0 with a .84 ERA. Wilson being stretched out 2-1 with a 2.40 ERA. Are they at the top of that list, in your opinion, for guys who have really kind of stepped up to the challenge and surprised this year?
Yeah, I think those would be, those would be two good nominations with Brian Wilson. Bryce.
Bryce.
Brian Wilson was the former Giants reliever.
Yep.
They seem to be in very different temperament from what I've seen. But with Bryce Wilson, he was a former starter, and then the Brewers kind of used him as a long reliever a little bit last year. And he was kind of the guy where if a starter went short, he would pitch 2 and a third or whatever. But now, he's earned the right to be in the rotation, and he's pitched well.
Mm-hmm.
And Brian and Hudson coming over from the Dodgers, kind of a middle of the offseason trade that wasn't really talked about very much because there just wasn't as much to say. Brian Hudson's a guy that's struck out a ton of batters in the minors, but he got a little bit of an opportunity with the Dodgers. But obviously the Dodgers have a lot of talent there, and he just wasn't able to kind of crack that group. And he got the opportunity in Milwaukee, and he's made the most of it. He's a gigantic man who doesn't really throw super hard for as big as he is, so I think that's a little deceptive. But yet he's very lanky, so
6'8".
You just got a bunch of arms and legs coming at you, so you can see how the extension can kind of mess with you if you're a hitter. And he's coming in throwing strikes. That's kind of been his big thing is, his strikeout numbers are down a little bit from what he was doing in the minors, which is to be expected. But the biggest thing is he hasn't been giving up free passes.
Mm-hmm.
He's coming in there throwing strikes and just really put the pressure on hitters, and he's a guy that's capable of going multiple innings. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of a weapon where if you got a starter that goes 5 and suddenly Hudson gives you 2 innings, well, then you're in pretty decent shape.
Mm-hmm. One, and this might be a little projection here, but obviously there's a lot of talk about the offense of this team and they're stealing bases and terrain and such, and they're 3rd in the majors right now in stolen bases. And, a lot of it is pointing to Pat Murphy, changing things up. But then on the same token, it's like, and then other people are like, well, they're just doing things different. He's got the same assistants, essentially, as Craig Counsell. Chris Hook is there on the pitching side, same hitting coaches as last year. So with it being the same assistants, do you think it's clear, it's simply as it's just a change in philosophy from Pat Murphy to what Craig Counsell had in terms of maybe being aggressive on the base paths and stealing more bases and such? Or do you think it's just players are performing at a higher level so they're able to do Bryce Trang's actually getting on base so he can steal more bases this year?
I can't say for sure. Obviously you can see the big difference just when the manager is different and something's different. That's the first place you're going to go, and that's not necessarily. I don't think it's not wrong to think that way, but it's just we don't know because really early on in Craig Counsell's tenure, they stole a lot of bases. If you go back to 2015, 2016, there's a season where Hernan Perez stole 30-some bases. Jonathan Villar early in his Brewers tenure stole a ton of bases. So it's not like Craig Counsell was always against it, but it did seem like the longer they got into his tenure, it became less of an issue. Now in 2018, 2019, it wasn't as necessary because you had a bunch of really good hitters. You had Yasmani Grandal and Eric Thames, and obviously Christian Yelich at the peak of his powers and stuff like that. Where when you're doing that, you don't want to run into outs on the bases, Mike Moustakas, Travis Shaw, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But it was something that in the last few years, when offense has been a little bit more of a grind for them, I was kind of wondering about, especially now when you've got this young athletic group. But to me, it's just whoever's idea it is, it's a good one. Whoever it is, you've got all these young athletic players, utilize what they do best, which is be athletes. Go out there, run, steal bases, put pressure on the opposing defense.
Yep. Yeah. Maybe it's Ricky Weeks.
Maybe. He
4 stolen bases in 1 inning against the Cubs. Settle down, man. What are you doing? Because I was actually looking at last year's stolen bases. Brewers finished 11th in team stolen bases.
Yeah, so it's
last
not
year,
like they were, not
honestly, it was a little higher than I thought they were going to be.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not like they weren't. It's just I think it's really been turned up this year. And I think part of that is just because you have a lineup with more guys that can steal bases.
Right.
And like you said, Bryce Trang's getting on base, actually. What do you do when you get on first base? Well, you can steal second base. You can't steal second base until you get on first base.
Mm-hmm. Right. So.
And I think the thing, too, you're seeing is it's not just a couple guys. At this point, Willie Adames is already almost at, his career high for steals. He's at, 7 or 8, something like that. He's pretty much at his career high already. You'll even see every once in a while Contreras or Jake Bauers take a base if it, and that just puts so much pressure on the opposing team when any pitch, hey, they could be going.
Right. All right, thanks, Brandon. We are going to take a quick break and wrap things up. I want to talk a little Packers and a player that I think needs to have a big year and is primed to have a big year. We're getting set for another busy travel season, vacations, taking our kids to all their games and activities, and you need a proper vehicle to get you to where you're going and safely. That's where Toyson Ford can help you. Toyson Ford will go the extra mile to provide you with compelling options for new and used car shopping. They will gladly work with you on financing no matter what your budget may be. They're committed to giving drivers across the Chippewa Valley the best in customer service. Check them out for yourself. Visit Toyson Ford in Chippewa Falls today and check out their website, toysonford.net. Last couple days, we've been hearing from position coaches for the Packers and coordinators. And yesterday, we got to hear from the defensive position coaches, and we got to hear from Rich Bisaccia. I want to start off with Rich Bisaccia, special teams coordinator for the Pack, because when that new NFL rule came down, where they're changing the kickoff rule, which would essentially allow for more returns. They want the return back in the game. One of the teams to vote no was the Packers, which I think surprised a lot of people because you have Keyshawn Nixon, who was named All-Pro returner the last 2 years in a row. So you got a rule where it allows more returns or really tries to enforce more returns, promotes more returns is probably the best way to say it. Why would Green Bay vote no? Rich Bisaccia kind of addressed that yesterday, and essentially what he wanted to see was testing the rule out in preseason before making a radical shift. This was his quote, courtesy from Ryan Wood on Twitter. I was really excited and proud to be a part of Mark Murphy and Matt LaFleur voting no from the perspective that I have as a special teams coach for a long time. So I was excited for that. We had a lot of conversations about it, them going into the meeting. So being a longtime coach, I loved kickoff. It's one of my favorite plays, and the ability it becomes a 3-level defense. Your speed players, your read players, and your fit players. I just loved all that. And when there's a great return, and it's a double team, and a kick out, and it looks like a power play on offense, and you see that hole open up, it's a wonderful play. So all that being said, I do miss all that. I miss the practices of how that's being practiced, and how that's being facilitated from the return portion of it, and what it did to a certain degree for bottom-level players on a 53-man roster who were able to play and make a living for a long time. Okay, so all that being said, I am excited about the new part because it's just a part of our personality. I'm glad that the play is still in the game, right? That we're not losing the play. So hopefully we're not going to lose those players, and you're not going to lose your livelihood as a coach. So I'm excited about the play, and it's radical. So let's see how good we are, all right? We're all doing the same thing, and let's see how it's going to look as time goes on. Also yesterday, we, as I mentioned, we heard from some position players. Derek Ansley, who is the pass game defensive coordinator, former defensive coordinator with the Chargers. But he said Jair, a lot of talk about Jair, and I get it, how the season ended last year, personality and such. But he said Jair arrived a couple weeks before the offseason program and has seen nothing but his best. He's leading that group the right way. Said him and Xavier McKinney apparently sit next to each other in meetings all the time and that. But one player in particular I kind of want to talk about is Devonte Wyatt. Because we've talked about different levels of this defense. We've talked about the defense as a whole. We know it's changing. We've talked about the safety. We've talked about the corners, the mentality, the linebackers, Rashawn Gary, Preston, Lucas Van Ness putting their hand in the dirt and such. We've even talked about Kenny Clark. But how big of a year is this for a guy like Devonte Wyatt, a first-round pick from just a couple of years ago? Didn't see much from his rookie year. Saw some glimpses last year. But I would say it's fair to say probably not enough for, first round pick in it. So with this change, will we see maybe a better version of a guy like Devonte Wyatt? Packers defensive line coach, Jason Rebovich, kind of, first of all, compared this defense or the defensive line to what San Francisco and Houston does. Says similar systems to this, quote, it's an attack front. It's about tackles for losses and sacks. We're going to look to create penetration into the backfield. Now, when it comes to Devonte Wyatt, he believes this new scheme will produce a, quote, great outcome for Devonte Wyatt. He said the thing about Devonte Wyatt, he's quick, fast, and athletic. So you're going to have to develop things around him to use those attributes. Devonte Wyatt, in my opinion, is heading into a very critical big year for him. And I know it's a change in defense, and maybe, more times than not you give the benefit of the doubt, adjusting it and such. But heading into his third year, maybe the guy just was not a fit for a 3-4 style of defense. That easily could be said. That easily could be the case. That he just isn't fit for a 3-4. And I mean, you look at his size and you're like, okay, yeah, does he really fit as a 3-4 defensive end sort of thing? Is he is he better suited for a 4-3 defensive tackle? And I believe he is, but it's up to Devonte Wyatt to prove that. We've talked about how this defense could benefit a guy like Kenny Clark, and I think it could benefit a guy like Kenny Clark. But with that also benefiting Kenny Clark, I think that in turn also benefits Devonte Wyatt. When you look at it, if we did a little bit of a depth chart right now for Green Bay, it's probably going to look like, if we do base front here, Rashawn, Kenny, Devonte, Preston, Lucas Van Ness. Yeah, I'm kind of putting those two as half there because it'll be a little bit of rotation. On paper, that's a solid front. But the thing is we haven't seen those guys kind of play in a front like that in a 4-3 front. We've seen Kenny and Devonte, hands in the dirt. And then Rashawn and Preston, standing up at a 2-point stance and rushing the passer from that. But when I see this, I look at this as an opportunity for Devonte Wyatt to maybe really showcase his skill set and why Green Bay drafted him as a first-round pick. He's a twitchy guy. He's got some speed to him. And if he's playing next to Kenny Clark here, this is an advantage for Devonte Wyatt that he has to just take it by the horns and run with it. I think this is a defense now, from everything we've heard, from everything we've learned, philosophically, this is a defense that is going to suit a player like Devonte Wyatt a lot better. It's going to be up to the player now to take advantage of that. He's going to have opportunities. I really believe that. I believe he's going to have opportunities to be a force on that defensive line, to be an aggressive defensive line. And that's the other thing. We're hearing this mindset of an aggressive defensive line, which is something different than what we have seen in a while for Green Bay. Because a lot of the times it was, all right, your defensive lineman, probably just kind of clogging up some holes or taking up the blockers and freeing it up for those linebackers. That's not going to be the case for this year. They're kind of unleashing this group. They're unleashing, like saying, go get that quarterback, get in the backfield, make some plays, and take down the ball carrier. It's like just it's almost like if I'm one of those guys, if I'm like Kenny Clark or if I'm Devonte Wyatt, and I'm hearing this, and I'm like, I've kind of built this up, this energy up, and I get to like unload it now. I get to play fast. I get to play aggressive. I'm ecstatic about that. I'm pumped about that. I was like, let's go. So I think this is heading into his third year. And I know we focus a lot on his fellow rookie and his fellow college teammate Quay Walker and the type of year, he's moving to a little bit more of a weak side linebacker. Everybody's kind of curious to see how he transitions to that. Don't forget about Devonte Wyatt though either, because I think one, he has to have a solid year. More than solid. He's got to have a good year. You're a first round pick. And I think he is a guy that when you look at it was probably put in a position where he wasn't best utilized. Now I think he's going to be put in a position where he's going to be better utilized. I can't wait. That's one of the guys that when we get to games and we get to, practices and such, I'll be excited to watch Wyatt and see the effect, because last year at preseason and training camp, and this might be a cautionary tale here. Last year at preseason training camp, Wyatt was one of those guys that was flashing in practice. He was making plays. We kept hearing that from the reporters, right? Wow, he's really showing off some speed. He's beating his block. But then when it got to games, okay, a couple plays here, but maybe it wasn't on the field enough. I don't think that's going to be the case this year. I think he's going to get more opportunities. He better get some more opportunities. And that's not to say don't throw out, Colby Wooden and Carl Brooks, because they had, some solid moments last year too. But this is a big year for Wyatt to really showcase and display why he was a first-round pick, why the Packers made him a first-round pick. And if he's going to be lined up next to Kenny Clark the majority of the time, I think he's going to have an opportunity to really showcase his athleticism and his speed and wreak havoc on that defensive line. And let's face it, the Packers defense needs him to do that too. This is going to be a defense where it's going to start up in the trenches now. A little bit more old school, which I'm all for. Games, in my opinion, are still won with offensive line and defensive line play. Winning in the trenches. And if Green Bay can set the tone with some solid defensive line play, that's going to make the job a whole lot easier for Cooper, Walker, Alexander, McKinney, everybody on the back end. It's going to make it that much easier. And that is going to do it for us on this episode of the Man Cave Podcast, brought to you by Hy-Vee and Toyson Ford. Don't forget, to check out the Swag Cave. That link to the Swag Cave is in the podcast description. All right, shout out to Resonance Branding Company for that. And if you haven't done so yet, if you don't mind, give us a 5-star rating and a positive review on whatever podcasting platform you're using, and follow and subscribe to the Man Cave Podcast. That way you never miss an episode. Till next time, I'm Dan Casper, and I'll talk to you on the next episode of the Man Cave Podcast.